guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Seth McFall. I am a Linux engineer by training, and I'm going to be putting together content specifically about Linux administration, Linux engineering, cloud engineering, and all things really having to do with Linux and Linux in the cloud, and some kind of like tech tips and tricks and some really kind of just basic advice and more advanced troubleshooting and kind of architectural setup of Linux systems, Linux processes, the use of just random kind of everyday Linux administration type of things and Linux engineering. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and put together the first in a video series, which you're starting off right here, which is called Bash Bits, where it's going to go over some kind of intermediate to more advanced Bash command line tips and tricks. And today we are going to be looking at my Microsoft Azure Ubuntu 22.04 Jammy Jellyfish instance in the cloud, and go over a quick process for how to unmount a specific set of submounts, right, remote file systems in this case, all at once on the command line using grep, mount pipe grep specifically, and Xargs and awk to only unmount specific targeted file systems versus, doing something like an Umount -a-t for all of one type of remote file systems, or doing it all, kind of just by hand with separate Umount commands. So this is a great way to, en masse kind of target any number of mounts that you want across any number of hosts that you want, and unmount all of them quickly and concisely and easily in one command. So let's take a quick look at this right here. I just have three separate sys mounts set up on this Azure instance. These are just Azure file shares, and let's say I want to only unmount two of them, right, and not all three. So I couldn't do a Umount -a because it's not specific enough, and I need to do it in a more efficient kind of way to just only target a few of these at once. So let's say this mount sys McFall Azure Samba is a production instance type of mount. It's being used actively in production, and these other two mounts need to be unmounted for the time being. So if I wanted to specifically target these, I could just do a Umount and pass both of these file systems as an argument to Umount. And fair enough, that wouldn't be so bad in this instance as there's only two mounts we're targeting. But let's say if I had any number of sys mounts to unmount, let's say 5 or 6, and 5 or 6 across multiple hosts, but not all sys mounts across multiple hosts, I would need either to spend a lot of time going through and doing that manually, or need to have kind of a more elegant process to do that. And what I'm going to show you here is that kind of more elegant process that I picked up over years of working on the Bash command line and working on Linux administration and Linux hosts. So what we're going to do is do a mount. These are all the mounted file systems, right? The ones we're targeting right here are just these three remote ones. But let's say, clear this, let's say we only want to target a few of them. So again, let's look at all of them real quick. So if I do a mount pipe grab all of them right here. Now let's say we only want to grab the bottom two, right? So McFall Azure Samba 00 and McFall Azure Samba 01. What I'm going to do is do a mount pipe grep -i for ignore case, not strictly necessary in this instance, but I always do that out of habit, and a -e as well tacked on there. E allows us to bring regex into the equation and use regex logic to only target specific, essentially strings or characters or anything that regex brings to bear on the ability to parse and target data, strings, characters, anything you want to really work with. So in this case, since we only want to target two of these three mounts, what I'm going to do is only really hit or grep out or pull out these two mount points, right? So McFall Azure Samba 00 and McFall Azure Samba 01. So what we can do with that is just do McFall Azure Samba 0 and then through 0-1. So we're going to grab out any string, right, that matches in the entire line, essentially that matches the string McFall Azure Samba 0 or McFall Xargs Samba 1, right? So this is what this range gives me right here when I'm using grep, right? I can think of it roughly as a globular pattern. I'm not sure if that's actually technically correct if we're talking about regex, but nonetheless, I'm talking about a range of numbers that can be valid for this final character right here, right? And that's anything from 0 to 1, which should only match these two mount points. So if I close this single quote and return it, I'll get only these two mounts, right? So we've excluded this top one right here. We've excluded the production mount, or I should say a mount being used in production, right? So from here, now that we have roughly the file systems we want to target for an unmount, we need to parse this down further to only grab the mount points themselves, right? So I like to do this using awk. Awk is an incredibly powerful command line tool. To be quite honest, I'm still only using it just really with its print function. That in and of itself is incredibly useful. But in this case, what we're going to do is only grab the mount point out of these two long strings that you see right here on standard out from my final command, right, from my most recent command, right? So with awk, I like to think of awk as an array list. I'm not sure if that's technically right, but those of you in computer science, or people that work with Python or coding in general can kind of get this. So I like to think of any given string, any given line as an array, and then awk is something that can pull out an index or a substring from that array, right? Now, if you look at it like this is technically not how most array lists work, I believe, because there's 0 index, but with awk, it starts at 1. But this first string right here, the source, this McFall store 00 file.core.windows.net, McFall Samba 00 is the first element, the first index in this array, and it starts at 1. So this is 1 right here. If I were to awk out and pass a 1 as an argument to it, it would return this. And then moving forward with the space as the delimiter, 2 would be on, space, 3 is the mount point, which is what we want, 4 is type, 5 is sys, and then 6, because these are all comma separated values with no space acting as a valid delimiter, are going to be all the mount point options. So in this case, let's go and return our command, and we're going to grab out or awk out the third element in the above string. So I'm going to awk print $3, just like this, hit return, and you can see here that we have both mount points right here. So at this point, we're going to do the final command, or pipe in the final command here, which is in Xargs, to go ahead and do the unmount here. So I'm going to go ahead and become root just so I can actually do the unmount without any permission issues. And then we're going to chain this all together. Just go ahead and recreate it. Grab my range again, so from 0 to 1. Close it, and then pipe awk. And again, grab that third element out of the array of strings up there. And again, that's probably not technically correct how we talk about awk. That's just how I think of it. And then just test this here to make sure I've got my mount points. I do, and it's the only two mounts that I want. This theoretical production mount up here is still being left in place. And I'm going to now unmount them all at the same time using Xargs. So Xargs, amazingly powerful, awesome command line tool. For those of you that don't know it, it essentially allows you to take the output of previous commands and issue a new command using the output of those previous commands as the argument of this new command, or the Xargs. Now that might be clear as mud, but you can think of it like this. So everything prior to this final pipe Xargs is pulling data out from me, right? So I've got the mount. I parse it down further by just grabbing the specific shares I want out of that mount command, and then I pull out just the mount points from that mount command such that I just have what you have up here, these two mount points. And now I'm going to take those two mount points, and I'm almost going to think of it as I'm going to place them right here and right here as the arguments for whatever I want for this final command, right? So you can think of them as just sitting here, theoretically, right? The two mount points right there. So any given command I want to issue right here will be past its arguments from the previous piped commands, in front of it, right? So Xargs just takes the output previously and passes it as the argument, the Xargs of an additional command. So in this case, we're going to do a Umount. I'm going to make it verbose with this -v flag right here. And I'm going to delete these examples right there just to illustrate the point. And then from here, we should be able to unmount only these two targeted file systems all at once with no issues, just like that. If you see here, if I want to do another mount pipe grep -IE sifs, you'll see I only have one mount left. That's that theoretical production mount that's being used on the host, with the other ones being unmounted successfully. So you can scale this up in any number of ways that makes it very, very useful. Xargs is incredibly powerful as a command line tool. I hope you find this useful. I'm hoping to come out, when I will be coming out, with more videos here in the near future in this Bash Bits series, again is what I'm calling this. There'll also be other upcoming content about cloud engineering for Linux engineers and Linux system administrators in Microsoft Azure, and then later on down the line in AWS and even some Google Cloud. So with that, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Again, I am Seth McFall, and welcome to this YouTube channel. Thanks.